The sky was still dark when Ray Johnson woke up at 4:30 a.m. He had been doing this for so long that his body hardly needed the alarm anymore. He stretched, feeling the familiar creak in his back from years of sitting behind the wheel, and headed to the kitchen to brew his coffee, strong and black, the way he'd always liked it. Ray looked at the photo of his daughter Jenny on the fridge. She was in her second year of community college now. "Almost there, kiddo," he whispered, touching the edge of the frame. Every early morning, every extra shift, every penny saved was for her future. By 5:15, Ray was walking through the bus depot, greeting the night shift drivers heading home. "Morning, Pete. How'd it go?" He called out to an older driver rubbing his tired eyes. Same old," Pete replied with a yawn. "Bundle up, it's freezing out there today." Ray nodded and patted his jacket pocket, making sure he had packed his lunch. A turkey sandwich, an apple, and a chocolate chip cookie that Mrs. Wilson from apartment 3B had given him yesterday. At 52, with his salt and pepper hair and the lifelines that framed his kind eyes, Ray wasn't just employee number 8461 to the Metropolitan Transit Authority. He was Ray the bus guy to hundreds of regular passengers who relied on him every day. The big diesel engine rumbled to life as Ray settled into his seat, adjusting his mirrors and checking his route schedule. Route 72, the longest in the city, stretching from downtown all the way to the rural edges where the suburbs faded into farmland. He liked this route, even though some drivers avoided it. You got to see the whole city change before your eyes, from the glass towers downtown, through the busy shopping districts, past the old neighborhoods, and finally to the quiet outskirts where the houses grew further apart. "Good morning, folks. Watch your step there," Ray called out at his first stop, where a group of night shift hospital workers waited to head home. He knew most by name: Lisa the nurse with the colorful scrubs, old Mr. Henderson from maintenance, who always sat in the third row, and Tanya, who worked in the cafeteria and sometimes brought Ray leftover muffins. "Bless you, Ray," said Lisa, feeding her fare card into the machine. "My car's in the shop again, and I don't know what we'd do without you showing up on time, every time." Ray just smiled and waited until she was seated before pulling away from the curb. "Just doing my job," he said, but the truth was he took real pride in being reliable. His own father had worked construction all his life, and he taught Ray that showing up matters, that the world runs on regular folks doing their jobs right. As the winter sun finally began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ray's bus rolled along its route. He hummed along to the oldie station, playing quietly on his radio, waving at familiar faces at each stop. It was just past 7:30 a.m. when Ray approached the stop at Pine and Elmwood, not usually a busy one, especially on such a cold morning. The temperature display on his dashboard read 17 degrees, and the wind made it feel even colder. That's when he noticed them. A family huddled together on the bench, surrounded by what looked like all their belongings in bags and suitcases. A man, a woman, and two small children, the youngest one crying while his mother tried to comfort him. Something wasn't right. Ray slowed the bus, feeling a tug in his chest. They weren't dressed properly for this weather. The little girl had a thin jacket, and the boy's shoes looked worn out. The parents kept looking up and down the road anxiously, like they weren't sure where to go. Ray wasn't scheduled to stop here unless someone signaled, but without hesitation he pulled the bus over, the brakes making that familiar hiss as the doors swung open. Maria Martinez pulled her thin coat tighter around herself and looked down at her children. Little Miguel had finally stopped crying, his small body shivering even though she'd wrapped him in the only blanket they had managed to grab before leaving their apartment. Sophia sat quietly beside her father, her eyes big and worried, too young to fully understand what was happening, but old enough to know something was very wrong. "The next bus has to come soon," Carlos whispered to his wife, his breath visible in the freezing morning air. His hands were red and chapped from the cold, and he hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours. Just 3 days ago, he had arrived at the construction site where he'd worked for 5 years to find a notice posted on the gate. The company had lost a major contract and was letting go of most of the crew. No warning, no severance, just a final paycheck that wasn't enough to cover next month's rent. Their landlord hadn't wanted to hear about their troubles. He'd given them until yesterday evening to leave, standing in their living room with his arms crossed while they frantically packed whatever they could carry. Business is business, he'd said, not meeting their eyes. I got people waiting for this unit. Maria's sister Anna lived on the other side of town, near the factory where she worked. Come stay with us until you figure something out, she had told Maria over the phone. It'll be tight, but we'll make it work. It had seemed like their only option. They had started their journey yesterday afternoon, taking the first of 2 buses they needed. But at the transfer point, they had missed the last bus of the evening. With both their phones dead and no money for a taxi, they had no choice but to wait overnight at this remote stop for the first morning bus. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Sophia said quietly, leaning against her father's arm. Maria reached into her bag and pulled out their last granola bar, breaking it in half to share between the children. Her own stomach growled, but she ignored it. Carlos hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, insisting the children needed the food more. The night had been the longest of their lives. They had huddled together on the bench, taking turns staying awake to watch their few belongings, clothes, some family photos, Miguel's stuffed dinosaur, and Sophia's schoolbooks. Everything else they owned was either still in their apartment or hastily sold in the past 2 days to scrape together what little cash they had. "Look at the sunrise," Carlos said, pointing to the horizon where pink and orange light was beginning to break through the clouds. He was trying to sound cheerful for the children, though Maria could see the worry etched deeply in his face. At 34, Carlos had always been the optimistic one, telling her things will work out even in their toughest times. But last night, when the children were finally asleep, he had broken down, whispering, "I failed them, Maria. I've failed all of you." She had held his hand in the darkness. "We're together," she told him. "That's what matters." As the morning grew brighter, more people began to appear on the streets, people with destinations, with warm homes to return to. A woman walking her dog glanced at them but quickly looked away. A man in a business suit crossed to the other side of the street. They had become invisible, the kind of people others pretended not to see. Miguel had started crying again, his small hands like ice despite Maria's attempts to warm them. Sophia, usually so talkative, had barely spoken all morning. The temperature on the bank sign across the street flashed, 17 degrees Fahrenheit. Maria wasn't sure how much longer they could stay out in this cold, especially the children. "Maybe we should try walking," Carlos suggested, though they both knew Anna's place was miles away, an impossible journey on foot with 2 small children and all their bags in this weather. That's when they heard it, the rumble of a large engine. Down the street, a city bus was approaching. It wasn't scheduled to stop here unless someone signaled, and Maria felt a surge of hope as Carlos jumped up, waving his arms frantically at the approaching vehicle. Ray pulled the bus to a complete stop and opened the doors, letting in a blast of cold air. The family looked up at him with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "You folks need some help," Ray called out, his voice warm despite the freezing temperature. Carlos nodded gratefully, gathering their bags. "Thank you for stopping. We weren't sure if—" "Don't worry about it," Ray said, stepping down to help them with their belongings. "Let's get you all warmed up first." The little boy was shivering badly, his lips almost blued from the cold. Ray helped the family aboard, noticing how the mother kept the children close, her eyes tired but watchful. They were carrying everything they owned in those few bags. Ray had seen it before. "Where are you headed?" he asked as they settled into the front seats, closest to the heater. "Pinewood Apartments, near the factory district," Carlos explained, his voice cracking slightly. "My wife's sister lives there. We've been trying to reach her since yesterday, but we missed the last connection and our phones died." Ray frowned, glancing at his route map. "That's Route 45 territory. You'd need to make 2 transfers from here." He looked at the children, the little girl trying so hard to be brave, the boy now leaning against his mother with exhaustion. Without hesitation, Ray reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Bus 72. I've got a family emergency situation here." The radio crackled. "Go ahead, 72. I've picked up a family at Pine and Elmwood. They've been stranded overnight in the cold with 2 small children. They need to get to Pinewood Apartments, but that would mean transfers in this weather. I'm requesting permission to make a minor route deviation." There was a pause before the dispatcher responded. "That's pretty far off route, Ray." "I know, Doris, but we're talking about kids here." Ray's voice was firm but respectful. "I'll make up the time on the return trip." Another pause, then, "All right, Ray. Deviation approved. Keep me updated." Ray turned back to the family with a smile. "We're going to get you directly to your sister's place. No transfers needed." Maria's eyes welled up with tears. "We can't thank you enough." "No need for thanks," Ray said, pulling away from the curb. Anyone would do the same. But not everyone on the bus agreed. A man in a business suit checked his watch pointedly. "Some of us have schedules to keep, driver." Ray met the man's eyes in his mirror. "Yes, sir, and we'll keep them. Just making a quick detour for an emergency." From the back of the bus, a woman with grocery bags spoke up. "Oh, hush, Frank. Your office won't fall apart if you're 5 minutes late." Several other passengers nodded in agreement, and Frank fell silent, looking slightly embarrassed. Ray reached into the small cooler beside his seat and pulled out his lunch bag. "Here," he said, handing it to Carlos. "There's a sandwich, an apple, and Mrs. Wilson's famous chocolate chip cookie in there. Split it among the kids for now." "We couldn't take your lunch," Carlos protested, but Ray waved him off. "I've got plenty of snacks stashed up here." Bus driver's secret. He winked at Sophia, who gave a small smile in return. As the bus rolled through the city streets, Ray reached under his seat and pulled out a thick emergency blanket, standard equipment on all buses, but rarely used. "Wrap the little ones up," he told Maria. "We'll have you someplace warm soon." What Ray didn't notice was a young woman in the middle of the bus, quietly filming the entire interaction on her phone. Judy Chen was a nursing student who rode Ray's route 3 times a week. She had watched everything unfold, from Ray's radio call to the sharing of his lunch. In a world full of people rushing past each other, this simple act of kindness struck her as something worth sharing. By that evening, as Ray finished his shift and headed home, completely unaware, Judy's video was already beginning to spread across social media. "Real-life hero. Bus driver goes above and beyond for homeless family," read the caption. Within hours, hundreds of people had shared it. By morning, thousands. And by the end of the week, it would reach millions, including people with the power to change lives. "And that video now has over 3 million views in just 48 hours, said news anchor Tom Wilson, his expression bright as the morning show's familiar jingle played. Local bus driver Raymond Johnson has become an overnight internet sensation, and for all the right reasons. The screen behind him showed a slightly blurry cell phone video. Ray helping the Martinez family onto his bus, wrapping the emergency blanket around the shivering children, sharing his lunch. The simple acts of kindness that most people wouldn't think twice about had somehow touched a nerve in a divided country hungry for good news. "We reached out to the Martinez family," continued co-anchor Patricia Hernandez, "who are now staying with relatives. They say Mr. Johnson quite possibly saved their children from serious cold-related illness that morning." The camera cut to Maria Martinez, interviewed in her sister Anna's small apartment. The warm light of a table lamp softened her tired features as she spoke. "My little boy's body temperature was already too low when Mr. Johnson found us," she said, wiping away a tear. "The doctor at the free clinic said another hour in that cold could have been. I can't even think about it. That man didn't just give us a ride. He gave us hope when everyone else just walked by and pretended not to see us." Back in the studio, Tom shuffled his papers. The Metropolitan Transit Authority has issued a statement saying they're proud of Mr. Johnson's actions, but reminded drivers that route deviations require proper authorization, which, to be fair, Mr. Johnson did receive from his dispatcher. "Always follow the rules, Tom," Patricia said with a gentle eye roll that made it clear where her sympathies lay. Of course, Tom agreed with a knowing smile. Now, the video has caught fire online, with shares from some pretty big names. The screen filled with social media posts. Basketball star Deonta Williams had shared it with the comment, "This is America at its best." Famous talk show host Ellen Woods had written, "Someone get me this bus driver's number now." Even pop superstar Taylor Quinn had reshared it, commenting, "Heroes don't always wear capes, sometimes they drive buses." What no one had expected was the reaction from former President Donald Trump, who posted, "Ray Johnson represents the best of American values. Strong, compassionate, doesn't just talk, ACTs. Would love to shake this patriot's hand." Meanwhile, across town, Ray Johnson was completely unaware of his new fame. He didn't use social media much beyond occasionally checking his daughter Jenny's photos, and he'd been working double shifts all week to cover for a sick colleague. It wasn't until Tuesday afternoon that he first realized something was happening. Passengers kept giving him strange looks as they boarded his bus. Some smiled widely at him, while others filmed him with their phones. "Excuse me," a teenage boy asked. "Are you the bus driver from that video? The one who helped that family?" Ray looked confused. "I help lots of people. It's part of the job." By the end of his shift, Ray's phone was buzzing constantly with text messages from friends and family. His daughter Jenny called, her voice excited. "Dad, you're all over the internet. Even my professors are talking about it." Ray pulled into the depot, shaking his head in disbelief. "I was just doing what anyone would do, honey, nothing special." His supervisor, Bill, was waiting for him as he parked the bus. "Ray, we've had calls from every news station in the city wanting to interview you. The mayor's office called." And Bill paused dramatically. "I just got off the phone with someone claiming to be from former President Trump's staff." Ray laughed. "Very funny. Who put you up to this prank?" Bill handed him his phone. "It's no joke, Ray. Check your email. They sent official verification. They want to arrange something special for you, but they're being very secretive about the details." Ray stared at the screen, finally seeing the viral video of himself for the first time. "All this for just doing my job?" he whispered, genuinely bewildered by the attention. Former President Trump sat in his office, scrolling through the comments on his social media post about Ray Johnson. The response had been overwhelming. Thousands of likes and shares within minutes, people from all political backgrounds agreeing that this was the kind of everyday heroism that made America great. "I want to meet this man," Trump said, looking up at his chief of staff, David. "Not just a phone call, in person." David nodded, already making notes on his tablet. "We can arrange a meeting at your office next week when you're back from—" "No," Trump interrupted, leaning forward. "That's not personal enough. This shouldn't be about me or photo ops. It should be about him." He thought for a moment, tapping his fingers on the desk. "What if we surprise him? Right there on his bus route?" David raised an eyebrow. "That would require significant coordination with local officials' security concerns." "Then coordinate it," Trump said with a smile. "Find out everything you can about Ray Johnson. And I mean everything, not just the basics." Within 24 hours, Trump's team had compiled a detailed profile on Ray Johnson. They learned he was a widower who had raised his daughter Jenny alone after his wife died of cancer 12 years ago. They discovered he had been putting away a small portion of every paycheck into a college fund for Jenny, who was studying nursing at the local community college. Most weekends, Ray volunteered at Hope House, a shelter for homeless families, cooking meals and helping residents with job applications. "He's been with the Transit Authority for 15 years, reported Alicia, one of Trump's assistants. Perfect attendance record for the last 8 years. His supervisor says he's never once complained about route assignments or schedule changes." Trump nodded thoughtfully. "And the family he helped? The Martinez family, how are they doing?" "Still staying with the sister, but it's cramped. 5 people in a 1-bedroom apartment," Alicia said. "Carlos has been applying for jobs everywhere, but construction is slow this time of year." Trump made a decision. "Here's what we're going to do. First, contact Jenny, Ray's daughter. We need her help to make this surprise work. Second, reach out to the Martinez family. I want them there too, but we need to be careful. They might be worried about their immigration status." "They're actually citizens," Alicia clarified. "Carlos came to the U.S. as a child, and Maria was born in Texas." "Good to know," Trump nodded. "That makes things simpler. Third, I want to do something meaningful for both families, not just a handshake and a photo." The team spent the next 5 days working out the details, coordinating with city officials, the Transit Authority, and local police to ensure security while keeping the surprise a secret. Jenny Johnson was brought into the plan, her eyes widening when she received a call from the former president's office. "My dad's going to freak out," she said, laughing nervously on the phone. "He's not much for attention. He still uses a flip phone and thinks Facebook is too complicated." Trump chuckled at that. "Just the kind of man I want to meet." Their learned Ray's schedule had him driving Route 72 every Tuesday and Thursday. They chose Thursday for the surprise, as it had fewer regular passengers and would be easier to manage. The transit authority agreed to place several undercover security personnel on the bus, posing as regular riders. Meanwhile, Jenny helped them with another key part of the plan. She revealed that her father had been struggling to pay for her final year of nursing school and had recently taken out a small loan that worried him tremendously. "He never complains," Jenny explained. "But I know he stays up at night worrying about the money. He wants me to finish school more than anything." Trump nodded as his team relayed this information. "Then that's what we'll help with." For the Martinez family, Trump's team worked with a local housing charity and several businesses to arrange something special, all to be revealed during the surprise. By Wednesday night, everything was in place. Security had mapped the route. The local media had been given a vague tip about something special happening on Route 72, and Jenny had managed to keep the secret from her father despite her excitement. "Tomorrow," Trump told his team, "we're going to show America that kindness still matters." Thursday morning arrived with clear skies and slightly warmer temperatures, a perfect day for what was about to unfold. Ray woke up at his usual early hour, completely unaware that this would be a day he'd remember for the rest of his life. "You seem tired, Dad," Jenny commented as they shared a quick breakfast before Ray headed out. "Maybe you should call in sick today." Ray shook his head, sipping his coffee. "Can't do that. Bill's already short-staffed, and people count on the bus showing up on time." He smiled at his daughter. "What's got you up so early anyway?" "Thought you didn't have class till noon on Thursdays." "Just couldn't sleep," Jenny said, trying to hide her excitement. She'd been practicing her poker face all night. "Good luck today." Ray gave her an odd look. "It's just a regular Thursday route, honey." "Right, of course," she said, nearly biting her tongue to keep from spilling the secret. By 7:30 a.m., Ray was on his usual route, picking up the regular Thursday passengers, fewer than usual today, which struck him as a bit strange, but nothing to worry about. What he didn't know was that many of the passengers were actually security personnel or part of Trump's team. At the Oak Street stop, a woman in a business suit got on and sat near the front, nodding politely to Ray. She was actually Diane, Trump's advanced security coordinator, confirming via hidden earpiece that everything was on schedule. "Next stop, Central Avenue and Pine Street," Ray announced, pulling the bus smoothly up to the curb. The doors opened and a small crowd was waiting, unusual for this stop. Ray noticed several people with cameras, which immediately made him suspicious. Then he saw a familiar face, Carlos Martinez, standing with his family, all dressed in their best clothes, smiling nervously. "Carlos, Maria?" Ray said in confusion as they boarded. "What are you folks doing here?" Before they could answer, the crowd parted and a black SUV pulled up behind the bus. Several men in suits approached, and then, to Ray's complete shock, former President Donald Trump himself walked toward the bus, waving to the small crowd that had gathered. Ray's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? Trump climbed the steps of the bus, smiling broadly, his tall figure filling the entryway. "Ray Johnson," he said warmly, extending his hand. "America needs more people like you." The bus fell completely silent. Ray stared, his mouth slightly open, his hands trembling as he realized this was actually happening. He managed to stand, nearly stumbling as he moved to shake Trump's hand. "Mr. President," Ray said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't understand." Trump's handshake was firm, genuine. "What's to understand? You showed exceptional kindness to a family in need. You didn't do it for attention or reward. You did it because it was the right thing to do." Ray's eyes filled with tears, catching him by surprise. He wasn't normally emotional, but something about this moment, being recognized for something he considered just part of being human, touched something deep within him. "I was just doing what anyone would do, sir," he finally managed to say. Trump smiled, placing a hand on Ray's shoulder. "That's where you're wrong, Ray. Not everyone would have done what you did. That's why we're here today." The cameras flashed as Trump presented Ray with an envelope. "This is for your daughter's college fund. No strings attached, no loans to pay back. Jenny's education is taken care of." Ray's hands shook as he took the envelope, unable to find words. Then Trump turned to the Martinez family, who were watching with wide eyes. "And for you folks," Trump continued, "I've been working with some friends. Carlos, there's a construction company waiting to interview you tomorrow morning. And we've arranged temporary housing for your family while you get back on your feet." Maria began to cry, clutching her children close to her. Carlos stood straighter, his dignity returning with the prospect of work. "This is what America is about," Trump said, turning to address the cameras directly. "People helping people, regardless of politics or background." Ray didn't ask who these folks voted for. He just saw a family in need and took action. Ray finally found his voice, though it cracked with emotion. "Thank you, sir, but this really isn't necessary. I didn't do anything special." Trump smiled again with genuine warmth. "The best heroes never think they are, Ray. That's what makes them heroes." 2 weeks after the surprise on Route 72, Ray sat at his kitchen table with Jenny, looking through the stack of letters that had arrived that morning. Ever since the video of Trump's visit had gone viral, they'd been receiving mail from all over the country. "Here's another one from a third-grade class in Ohio," Jenny said, opening a large envelope filled with colorful drawings. "They made you into a superhero. Look, bus man, driving people to safety." Ray chuckled, shaking his head. "I still don't understand all the fuss." The donation from Trump had paid off Jenny's remaining college tuition and provided enough for her living expenses through graduation. She wouldn't need to work late nights at the diner anymore, meaning she could focus fully on her nursing studies. "Dad, you've made the national news for days now. People are calling you a symbol of what's right with America," Jenny said, squeezing his hand. "Just accept it. You're a good man who did a good thing, and for once the world noticed." Ray smiled at his daughter. He'd taken 2 weeks off work, his first vacation in years, at his supervisor's insistence. The transit authorities getting more positive publicity than they've had in decades, Bill had told him. "Enjoy the break. You've earned it." Across town, Carlos Martinez buttoned up a crisp new work shirt, preparing for his 3rd day at Horizon Construction. The interview Trump had arranged had gone well. The owner, a veteran who appreciated the former president's recommendation, had hired Carlos on the spot. "Do I look professional?" Carlos asked Maria, who was organizing their new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom that the housing charity had helped them secure with a manageable rent. "You look handsome," she said, straightening his collar. "How does it feel to be working again?" "Like I can breathe again," Carlos replied, kissing her cheek. "Like I'm myself again." The children were already enrolled in the neighborhood school, with Sophia proudly telling everyone that her family was famous and that they knew a bus driver who knew the president. Back at the bus depot, Ray's coworkers had created a small shrine at his usual parking spot, newspaper clippings, a trophy made from bus tickets, and a framed photo of Ray with Trump. Some found it amusing, others genuinely touching, but all agreed that if anyone deserved recognition, it was Ray. "Did you see the GoFundMe page?" asked Pete, one of the older drivers, during their lunch break. "Some lady in Florida started it to expand the homeless shelter where Ray volunteers. It's already raised $80,000. Hope House, where Ray had quietly cooked meals for years, had been overwhelmed with donations and new volunteers. The director had called Ray in tears, saying they could now expand their family wing and offer more job training programs. A week later, Ray returned to work, sliding behind the wheel of Bus 72 with a familiar sense of comfort. Despite offers for promotions, TV appearances, and even a book deal, he had politely declined most of them. "I'm a bus driver," he told Jenny. "It's what I do." As he pulled away from the depot that morning, Ray noticed several new passengers on his route. People who had changed their commute just to ride on the famous bus. He greeted them warmly, but without fanfare, treating them the same as he'd always treated everyone. At the Pine Street stop, Ray saw a familiar face waiting, Maria Martinez, holding a covered dish. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson," she said as she boarded, handing him the container. "Homemade enchiladas. Carlos starts his 2nd week of work today, and Sophia got an A on her math test." Ray smiled. "That's wonderful news." "We will never forget what you did for us," Maria said quietly. "Not just the ride that day, but seeing us when no one else would." As Maria took a seat, Ray noticed a young man watching their exchange. After Maria sat down, the young man approached. "Excuse me," he said hesitantly. "I just wanted to say, I saw what you did. The video, I mean. And yesterday, when I saw a woman struggling with her groceries in the rain, I'd actually stopped to help. I wouldn't have before. So, thanks for that." Ray nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "That's how it works," he said simply. "Kindness spreads." As the bus pulled away from the curb, Ray gazed at the familiar streets of his city with new eyes. Nothing about his daily route had changed. He was still just a man driving a bus, helping people get where they needed to go. Yet somehow, everything felt different. Small acts of kindness, he realized, were like stones dropped in still water. The ripples traveled farther than you could ever see.